Patrick Johnston covers the Canucks for the Provincetown Post Media. He joins us on Thursdays.
He's covering the wrong Canucks this week, though. Should be out in Abbotsford.
It's true.
Yeah. Where were you in Abbey yesterday for Phil
I
Kessel's
wasn't.
underwhelming?
Listen, I wasn't. He's not talking.
Oh, we touched a nerve. He's coming out firing.
Did Coos go?
No. I talked to Jim Rutherford on the phone and got a very nice article.
I saw that. So why don't you take us through it? What were the big hits?
Well, the usual question, you wake up, everybody, first of all, ask Abbey PR, is there any chance Phil's talking to you? No, and he's not, first of all, not under contract, so he can do what he wants. Second of all, it's the AHL, there's no rules. So if you were under contract, it's up to them. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't happening. So I'm like, well, how do I do the thing that nobody else is doing? Well, let's see if I can get the president on the line. And he's always, he's proud of his team and he's ready to set the tone of what's going on. And so I thought about depth and what does Phil Kessel represent? Someone made a really good point to me this morning that, as much as the vibes are fun, right? Like the vibes of the Kessel story is fun. But the reason why you even look at a player like this, and this is why the depth question is there in general, is Jeff Tambellini was in the top 6 in Game 7 in 2011, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so if worse comes to worse, and you have to fit somebody in on Elias Pettersson's wing, who do you want, Phil Kessel or Linus Karlsson, right? Like, It's those kinds of questions. And, the funny thing was that person mentioned this to me was that was actually something that kind of came up in our discussion. I didn't really play into it too big. Maybe I should have made a reference in the story in hindsight. But, Rutherford said, listen, part of what you do when you're looking at depth, absolutely we look for depth, right? I've always done it. Because part of it is you game out, like, what if? All the what ifs you can imagine. What if we have to replace this guy in the lineup? How can we patch things together? What if this person gets hurt? Who could actually fit in to a role over and above even what we have now? What would your lineup look like this? And so, that is why you look at a guy like Phil Kessel. Like, he's like, listen, the guy's won. We need to see if he can play. We don't know if he can play. And, I think he was very honest about that. I think they like the person, but he hasn't played since Game 4 of Round 1 last year. He wasn't playing a ton. He did play an entire season for Vegas, though. He is the reigning Ironman man in the NHL. But that's the question is. So if you're looking for depth, it's not just a case of, do we need a number 8, but could we pick up a guy who could slot in? You look at that 2017 team, Rutherford traded for Mark Streit, who played a bunch of games down the stretch and then played 3 games in the playoffs. Like, you add guys because you are worried about the worst case scenario.
That's the most likely scenario for sure, and that's wherever I think most sane people went. Is there a non-zero chance though that he's going to be brought in to replace somebody that will be traded to get depth for the defense core?
Sure, that's possible. I mean, they have about, right now as it stands, they have about $2.6 million in cap space to work with, and there's some decent defensemen. I mean, like, you look at guys they know well, like Chad Ruedel, who's obviously a pure depth guy in Pittsburgh and always been that. He'd be cheap. But Justin Schultz, say in Seattle, if Seattle decides they're out of it, he's on $3 million, so you'd have to get some retention there. But yeah, like there are players above that. Chris Tanev, that if the price for retention is too much to pay, but if you can find a way to unload, I don't know how you would do this at this point. I don't think there's a whole lot they're trying to get rid of on this roster at this point. But yeah, of course there's a scenario if you get aggressive. I don't get the sense they're going to be overly aggressive at that kind of move. Okay. I do think the focus now is depth, and that they're going to find because in the end, right now, who's the number 8? It's Mark Friedman. Like, he's like had a nice season, but you'd like to think you can do better. You can find a guy that's got a little more experience, a little more perhaps reliable, a little more tooth to his game, playoff hockey. Like, Friedman's been fine, but do you need a guy that can fill in? What happens if Nikita Zadorov gets suspended again? Things like that. How do you fill out your roster?
You love that Mark Streit example, huh?
Yeah, but it stands out to me.
I think 3 weeks running now, boy.
But it stands out to me.
Sponsoring
well, all right, fine, Ron Hainsey, right? But like,
Hainsey.
But like Ron Hainsey was picked up in 2016 and ends up becoming a key player for 2 seasons. Trevor Daley, like these are the points, right? Like, he picked up guys who play, and then he picked up guys who didn't even end up playing for his team. Justin Schultz was another one.
Trivia for the two of you. You're right, Jeff Tambellini played in Game 7 in 2011. 2 wingers played in that game and had less ice time than Jeff Tambellini. Who were they?
Oh my goodness.
2 wingers for the Canucks
Well,
in that game.
Mason Raymond, because he got hurt. Was that game 7?
No. Played in game 7
In
Okay.
game 7.
and played less than Jeff Tambellini. 2 wingers. Maxime Lapierre actually played less than Jeff Tambellini in that game, but he played down the middle
You're right.
on the 4th line. Who
Oh
were
my
his wingers?
God.
Rafi Torres and
No, Torres was up line up.
Chris
Mhm.
Higgins somehow.
No, Chris was up line up.
Victor Oreskovich.
Very good, Grady
Oh,
Sass.
good one.
He was in game 7.
He played game
No wonder
7.
they lost.
He played
He
5
had-
minutes
yeah.
and 46 seconds. And then this next gentleman played 8 minutes and 19 seconds.
Alex Bolduc. I don't know.
No, tough guy. Also cerebral.
Aaron Volpatti.
No,
No.
good shout, but I believe Volpatti came later.
Yeah.
Think Scrabble.
Think
Oh,
Scrabble.
Tanner Glass.
Tanner Glass.
Tanner Glass.
Oh.
Well done. Do you
Never
think
tell you
the-
my Tanner Glass. Tanner Glass's now wife was a student teacher in a class I was subbing for, like the next year, I think, or that spring. Anyway, it was fun. It was
But
just
once
very
again,
random.
that little
underscores.
factoid, that factoid underscores depth
Yeah.
and the importance of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure the 4th line and 3rd line were better at game 1 of the playoffs that year.
Mhm.
But this bottom 6 is potentially a lot better than the bottom 6 of the 2011 team.
Well, it's certainly better than Oreskovich,
yeah,
Glass, and
yeah.
Tambellini.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Tanev. Do you think they do their 2025 first rounder for Tanev?
I was sitting there staring at you look at that wonderful cat friendly page, which has all the players, and then it has all the picks across the top. And I found myself looking at that. And I think I feel like if they're sitting there going, Chris Tanev, I think they think Chris Tanev is the kind of guy that would do exactly like would take them to a next level, right? Like I think that's the kind of trade they really want to make. If he is the guy and the alternatives are simply just not anything close, I think they probably would look long and hard at it. I know they obviously recognize the value of a first round pick and a second round pick is massively bigger than 3rd, 4th, 5, 6, 7, right? Now, obviously, trading away this year's first round pick where it's going to be like pick 30, as I've mentioned before, is a lot easier to stomach than the complete unknown that would be next year.
Like, what if they take a step back next year?
And we should
that's what I
clarify,
mean.
like,
Yeah.
we'll see how far they go in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Like the final 4 draft spots are set by the conference,
Right,
finals,
but I'm still saying it's high 20s, right? You're
Yeah,
going
yeah.
26 or
yeah,
whatever.
if they finish
Yeah.
first overall, then if they fall short of the conference final, it comes in at pick 28.
Yeah.
So
28,
yeah.
But and so it kind of comes back. Yeah, what happens to the fallback? Like they are clearly going all in. Like we know this. So and they know there is a lot of risk. There's a lot of contracts that they have of players who are not under contract for next year. Not just Elias Pettersson, but obviously mostly Elias Pettersson. And the roster next year is going to look very different. I mean, even this year, like you can take the lesson of what Rick Tocchet's lineup looked like when he started just over a year ago. There are 11 guys gone from that roster. Like they've turned over a lot of players. Now they haven't turned a lot of players over at the top of the roster. They're probably going to have to do that for next year just because. But yeah, like that to me is the question. And I sit back, like that is the price. If Chris Tanev is so far over and above all the options in front of you, and the price becomes next year's first round, like you may just have to bite that bullet because that's a player I think that really does improve you. And it's also keeping that player away from Edmonton, right? Like that's part of the equation, right? That goes into all of this. It's not just what you can do, but it's keeping other teams from doing stuff.
Just before we leave Kessel, is this in the bag that they're going to sign him? Or if he doesn't look good here, like could they possibly just say thanks but no thanks, Phil?
I mean, I think as I said before, like he is a sort of a plan C, right? Like they are giving him a skate, they're having a look. There are 31 other teams in the NHL. Whether he wanted to come only to Vancouver, I don't know, but I don't expect that's the case. I think the guy just wants to play. So there are a lot of good teams in this league who have said no, he's not up to it. I mean, the Stanley Cup winner in the end said he wasn't up to it. There was a great interview by Luke Fox from Sportsnet during the playoffs, during the Stanley Cup final, where he wrote about Phil Kessel, the healthy scratch, and it was all basically what a good culture guy he is. But Bruce Cassidy was very honest. He said, "Listen, I think Michael Amadio and William Carey bring more to the table than Phil Kessel does at this point." And Phil Kessel had played, like I said, 82 games that year. They knew exactly what he was about. And he'd been fine. He put 36 points or something like that, right? Like he had not been a nothing player. But at this point in his career, he's a fourth liner who's going to help your power play out, who's not going to, you're kind of not he's not what he was at all. Even in 2016-17, he was a bit of, he was playing with Bonino and Hagelin, right? A bit of a soft minutes third line that did awesome. One of the great third lines, but had to be managed even then. And that's 7 years ago. So, no, I don't think this is locked in 100%. I think it's highly likely it happens. But they're in, he's got today, he practiced yesterday. Obviously, everyone, I think, seen the video by now. Practice today, practice tomorrow. They've got a couple games this weekend against Calgary. Then they go to California next week. My guess would be, you assign him to a PTO at some time in the next week so he can play some games. You've got the deadline in 3 weeks. You want to have him secured on your roster if you are going to sign him, because you're going to have to waive him to stash him in the minors, because I assume that's going to be part of this story.
But you sign him to an AHL deal first, don't you, so that you can play him?
Well, you need him on an NHL deal before the trade deadline, right? Because
right. Yeah. But now
so you have some time.
Sign him.
Yeah.
To an
Yeah.
deal.
You have a little. Yeah. You have some leeway, right? But you have to have him on an NHL deal and on your one of your 50 contracts by March 8th, right? Like that's the only thing that we're looking at.
It's just there's a little risk for Kessel to take an AHL deal, because then he's potentially in purgatory with no chance to sign with another
elsewhere
AHL team. But I hear what you're saying, and it does seem
AHL
like
PTOs are a thing too. So you can do that.
So I would think, I would think.
Yeah.
Speaking of keeping the bands together, I was thinking about this yesterday. We asked on our poll question, can they afford to keep this great third line together for next season, with Blueger and Joshua being UFAs. Do you remember that one deadline where late blooming Alex Burrows had the screws put to him by management? Hey, we got a hell of a deal here for you, or you can sign this 4-year, $8 million, $2 million per year contract. And Burrows, having never hit the jackpot as a professional hockey player, bit, and it turned out to be maybe the great value contract in the NHL time. Any chance they go to Joshua here before the deadline and see if he's willing to bite?
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's smart, he's just saying, I'm going to see how things go in the summer. Like he's having a great year. I absolutely, I think the Canucks would be saying, we would love to keep you around. Here's what we're thinking right now. I mean, I don't know how likely it is that he really would do that. I think he likes it here. He's I was saying to someone the other day, like, selfishly, from media standpoint, he's been one of the good ones this year. Like, he's a really smart, you can tell he's comfortable. He feels good. Obviously he's playing great. I think the Canucks, I hope, are being realistic on this one, because you don't want to overpay for the person's first good season. And, you don't want to that's the lesson forever that this team, the past management team never learned, was don't overpay for the guys you really like. Overpay, we shouldn't overpay for anyone, but pay for the things that actually are going to help you win. And those are the guys at the top of the lineup, and guys in Joshua do get squeezed. So I could see it happening. I'm not sure it would, but you never know.
It's a lot to ask, and term is going to matter to him as well. So to Matt's point, if you overpay on term, you might be able to keep the number down a little bit. But has that third line changed your opinion?
And that was the genius of the 4-year deal with Burrows, right? Like,
sucker him in with the term a little bit. Has the sheer amazingness of this third line changed just the overall outlook of them staying together for next year, the three of them?
Well, go back to the Kessel story, right? I mean, in many ways, Connor Garland's kind of the Phil Kessel of this line, right? Like he's the guy who's driving the offense. Bonino was a good two-way player. Hagelin, good two-way player. I mean, the way this has worked out, I think a lot about Patrick Alvin when he was telling us about Teddy Blueger last summer. And I think this guy could score 15 goals. I don't think Teddy Blueger's going to score 15 goals, but Teddy Blueger's had a very strong two-way season, better than I think we have possibly expected he would. And I think a lot of that is Connor Garland. I think Dakota Joshua really finding his way, finding himself to the next step after the tough love from Tocchet. There's a lot in this line, and it's kept going. And there's not a lot in it. A lot about this line that tells you that it's an illusion. Like I think this is kind of real. They're very good in terms of puck possession. Obviously, the straightforward, straight ahead game that Blueger and Joshua play with Garland doing all these wild things with the puck. I mean, as I wrote a month or two ago, like Joshua saying, you guys really got to keep your stick on the ice with this guy. It is something I'm sure it is something to keep together because you found something there, and it's something that is hard to find. And God knows we've seen this team struggle over the last decade trying to find a proper third line. Not just a center, but a proper third line. I think if you can keep this together, absolutely. But it is at the same time, Connor Garland's making a lot of money, and that's going to make it hard to devote much more money to this third line. That's the other thing to think about is how are you laying out your money? Obviously, the cap goes up and Tyler Myers' contract's coming off the books, but there's also the OEL buyout going on there, and you're going to have to hopefully find a raise for Elias Pettersson, and Philip Hronek's obviously getting a big raise. It's not the priority list is going to be that, and then you're going to see what's left to deal with a guy like Dakota Joshua.
Okay, lastly, do you anticipate answer our poll? Do you anticipate bad blood? Will there be vengeance at Rogers Arena tonight?
Get real. No, it wasn't. I mean, I wasn't there. There weren't many reporters there on Saturday to ask about what happened, but it's just, if they had done something, maybe, but they want to win the game, right? Like their coach, Rick Tocchet, will be telling them, guys, let's win the game and let's focus on how we play. Let's forget about how they're celebrating goals. I think it's that simple. No, there's not going to be nothing tonight.
Well, of course, it could go the other way, right? Like the Raymond hit, the hit from Zadorov on Raymond, they might still be
sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. If we're talking about that, sure. I think there could be something about that. Sure. Zadorov's first game back, but I don't think
flipped him just like that.
Are you covering this game, Peach?
Well, no. I mean, sorry. I thought no. Hold on.
Here tonight.
No, because sorry. Everybody's been talking about the nonsense in Ottawa. That's what I thought you were asking about.
Okay.
Sorry, that's what I thought the specific question was. Yeah, sure, the Zadorov stuff, absolutely. But sorry, I thought you meant in terms of response to the post-game celebration.
I'm teasing. Okay. We sort of meant that. We also sort of meant the hit on Raymond, which was not a good one, and it deserved a
bad hit. Yeah,
but at some point, the guy got suspended. There was...
Well, yeah, but that doesn't always,
No, the guy got suspended, but my feelings are still hurt?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that still happens, sure.
Hockey player feelings.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
They're complicated. They don't manage them well.
Yeah, they bruise easily.
Just talk about it, guys.
I don't, I mean, the Zadorov, sure. I don't, they're very well could be something he'll have to...
Raymond took a second hit in that game, if I'm not mistaken. Poor guy was being ragdolled. All right, Peach. Great stuff. Thanks for being a good sport. We'll catch up next Thursday.
Take care.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.